Aw, yeah, it's time for another episode of the Comic Book Kaiju. Hey, everybody. If you were expecting We Love Comics, we have retired that podcast. It has been put out to pasture. If you found us through We Love Comics, we would like to thank you very much for joining us and for continuing to join us. Hey, if you found us through Vactor Loves Comics, thank you very much. If you found us through Seasons Change, this is the same feed as all of those podcasts. So thank you very much for sticking around. Hi, Mom. But we are now the Comic Book Kaiju, a weekly comic book discussion podcast where allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Vactor, and I'm here to say that Markus Seaberry and Hunter Camp are two of my best friends in the world, and I can't think of any other place that I want to talk to them but on here, on this podcast. So let's start off with the man with the plan, the biggest homie in the world, Mr. Markus Seaberry, Black Nerd Power, CineSundry, Markus Seaberry. Seaberry, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm excellent. You know, this is one of the greatest joys in my life, outside of actually reading the comic books and spending time with my baby Grogu and my young Padme. This is the greatest joy in my life is talking comic books and watching Hunter Camp laugh. These are the things that bring me joy. So Seaberry, I'm doing very well, and I'm very happy to be here. Now, all the way from Jackson, Mississippi, all the way from AEW NXT, Mr. Twitch.tv/I am Hunter Camp. He is the ookiest, the kookiest, the spookiest. I am Hunter Camp.
That's
Camp.
me. That's me.
How are you?
I am okay. My cat set his tail on fire, and now he is running around.
You know, I want to thank Hunter Camp for joining us because right now I know every fiber in his body is trying to play Stray, the new cat video game.
Which, yes, I've played it. So I guess what would be equal to one time. I've not beaten it yet, but I played it on the PS4 and the PS5 and streaming off the PS4. But I think I'm switching back to Elden Ring now for streams. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, I do thank Hunter Camp for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk to you, the listener, all about, guess what? We have a Book of the Month club, boys. And the very first entry is Naomi Season One. So actually, before we get into our first ever Book of the Month, Hunter Camp, why don't you tell the listeners, why are we the Comic Book Kaiju?
Well, we are the Comic Book Kaiju because we are our passion for comics is so monstrous that it can only be described as that of a kaiju.
Ooh-wee! And Seaberry, are you Mothra? Who are you?
No, man, I'm Gamera.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And I also love alliteration. So comic book kaiju, that was something that I said specifically when Hunter Camp was coming up with the name of this show. I said, let's get some alliteration in there. So that's why we have changed from We Love Comics over to Comic Book Kaiju, in case you were wondering. Also, there's a bunch of other shows that have We Love Comics that I did not realize when I came up with that name. So we are now the Comic Book Kaiju because there are no other Comic Book Kaijus out there. So thank you very much, listeners and supporters. Don't forget, you can always leave us a review in Apple Podcasts and on Spotify because, well, I guess we still have the same reviews, but we need more. So tell your family, tell your friends, if you're listening to this, if you enjoy comic books, every week we're going to be discussing all of the latest and greatest topics in the world of comics. And we're going to start off this episode by talking about Naomi Season One. Now, Naomi Season One, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see Hunter Camp hand modeling his copy. But this was brought to us by Markus Seaberry himself. So, Seaberry, why did you choose Naomi Season One?
I mean, it just ticked off a lot of boxes for me, man. First off, it's Brian Michael Bendis as a one writer. You know, I loved his Marvel work. His DC stuff been kind of hit or miss to me, but I wanted to give us a chance. It was part of a new imprint called Wonder Comics, seemed to be more, you know, youthful heroes. I kind of got a soft spot for teen heroes. It's a Black woman. and it's also co-written by a Black writer.
David Walker.
Yes, David Walker. Thank you. I blanked for like I ain't talked to this dude in real life. Yeah, man, and it's and I like coming of age stuff. I like stories where heroes are figuring out things. Because one thing I hate is people get their powers and like, oh, I know everything. Man.
Right.
And like especially when they start flying everywhere, I'm like, oh, so your powers came with GPS? you just know where the hell everything is on Earth?
Right.
Things like that. So there's a lot of that in this book. And I like the fact that, they use some alien races that are already in the DC universe. I like to see people make use of a shared universe. I mean, if you're in a shared universe,
might as well.
Yeah, I think it's cool to add to the mythos.
Right. Well, that is awesome, Seaberry. And I do want to point out that the artist, Jamal Campbell, is also African American. So there's a lot of diversity, a lot of representation involved in Naomi, I should say. And Naomi also got her own television show, one season show on the CW. Only Markus Seaberry has seen this show out of all three of us. And from what I've heard, Seaberry, it is not worth me visiting. Is that correct?
Not really, man. Okay. I made it about 4 episodes. I'm gonna go back. They're still on my DVR, but I was like, I wanted this to be good so much. Like, why not a good show? Why are you not good?
So I specifically wanted to jump in because I've been hearing so much about Naomi. This came out in 2019, so it's been about 3 years. I knew about the TV show, and I knew kind of that it was a new African American character. And like Seabury said, Brian Michael Bendis, I was a huge Bendis fan going back to Marvel and Ultimate Spider-Man, which is my favorite run of all time, Bendis on Ultimate Spider-Man. So I wanted to see what he was doing in DC. I wanted to see this new African American character, and I jumped into season 1. But before I give my thoughts, let's hear from the Hunterist camp. Hunter Camp, what did you think about Naomi season 1?
So I absolutely loved it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. It was exactly what I think I wanted. It was I'm not like the biggest origin story person.
Right.
I typically just like a story to be good. So with this one, it felt like I was reading something that was really special. It felt like I was reading something like the beginning of something that's going to be significant. It reminded me of reading the first run of the Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man. It reminded me of Ultimate Spider-Man. Like it had that same sort of spirit to it. So for me, I really, really enjoyed it. It was exactly what I was hoping it would be.
And Seabury, you and I both have caught up because there is a season 2. We're not going to talk about that, but we are both caught up. So we have a little bit more of the story to draw from than Hunter does. But speaking of just these first 6 issues, can you recall, Seabury, when you were reading these as they were coming out? What was your feeling like when they were, as you saw each new issue coming out at the shop?
It was cool, and I was just really trying to figure out, what was going on, because like she was trying to figure out, like, okay, she has adopted parents, and one of them is from the planet Rand. That's where Adam Strange is at.
Right.
And she was like, oh, so you're my adopted parents, huh? Who's my birth parent? It was a bit of a superhero more research going on there. She's like, are you my daddy? Are you my daddy? So, it was a lot of that going on, and it was just interesting seeing it unfold on a monthly basis. I was like really getting into it, and I really wanted to know the mystery, and I wanted to know where this character came from, because like, I don't know, it just seems so hard to like launch new characters, and I mean, yeah, they do use some established alien races, but you know, I can't really blame them because, like, man, it used to be like, I remember there was a point in Marvel, it's like, man, unless you was like Avengers or X-Men related or something like that,
right?
It was like, man, your book ain't gonna last.
Yeah.
So it was just cool.
And that's actually a very good point. It's hard. It's very hard to kind of have a character breakout. And I think we're actually going to talk about this on a future episode, specifically with Miles Morales, Riri Williams, and Naomi. But I was feeling that too, Seabury. And a lot of new books that come out, it's really hard to kind of jump in that world when you haven't. I think Invincible is really good about that, and the Radiant Black stuff that's coming out right now at Image is really good
Yeah.
about that. It is very difficult. So I will say I was probably the least uh, Naomi fan on this podcast. After reading season one, I really enjoyed Jamal Campbell's art. To me, this was like finding a diamond to me. Like I had not seen Jamal Campbell's art on anything else. So this was something for me that was a discovery. And just from the opening page, I was like, this is fantastic. Love the coloring on it. Love the style. I could see an animated film looking like this. But Bendis's writing for me fell flat in terms of the origin story because it felt very generic to me. And she also felt very overpowered at the same time, where she's already, like I said, Hunter hasn't read beyond this, but she's already in the Justice League after this. She's already in Young Justice. She's already in all these big, like, super teams. And she's even, her nickname is like Powerhouse. She's just got a whole lot of powers, and it just felt too fast for me. It almost felt like she didn't earn it because at one day she's a regular person, next day she's like Superman, and I would have liked a little bit more discovery of her powers, and then also kind of a little bit more nuance, or even a little bit more novelty of her storyline, because it is very similar to a lot of things that came before, whether it be Superman or a lot of the other characters where alien comes down, she's got powers, and now she has to fit in amongst the humans. So that was my kind of issue with it.
So do you think that, like, the reason they chose the alternate dimension was more to do something a little bit different? Because I mean, like, let's be honest, like, how many origin stories are, I mean, like, that's like the origin story, you know what I mean?
Yeah. What's interesting, and Brad, I'd like to get your take on this. Multiverses are so in vogue right now. Like, we just saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We just saw Loki, and with
Riverdale has a multiverse too. Like,
yeah,
it legit does. So that's
there's
something
a
that's
ton
everywhere.
of stuff, whether it be video games or comic books, movies, television shows. Everything's got a multiverse right now. And Seaberry, it felt like a special thing to go into another dimension or another reality. When we were growing up, Crisis was rare. There was not a new Crisis every week like we're seeing now with Dark Crisis in the infinite madness of possibilities of whatever it is. So, Seabury, what are you thinking right now in July of 2022? What is your thoughts on multiverses?
They kind of beat me into submission.
Yeah.
Because if you remember back in the day when we were on that podcast called Geekland,
Yes.
one of my episodes, I was like, I don't even like alternate universes. I was like, back then I only liked MC2, which kind of stuff from stuff in the 90s and was like Juggernaut's son, J2, Peter Parker, Mary Jane's girl,
Mayday Parker.
Yeah. Mayday Park and stuff like that. And then you kind of made me a convert to the Ultimate Universe.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like, those are my two. I was like, all right, that's enough. You know what I'm saying? But like, now everything is fast and loose. And then I feel like what kind of broke the levees on this thing was DC being like, you know what? Everything's canon.
Right, yeah. After Right. After they said, okay, we're going to specifically have 52 universes. It's going to be nice and neat. And then, okay, now there's just one. Oh, wait, now everything's
Yeah.
infinite and every Earth is back. Yeah.
So I actually want to like I hope to do that as a topic also.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think that like one of the criticisms was like because fans were like, oh, is this canon? Is this not canon? And I think that when you open up and say F it, everything is canon, like that gives freedom to the writers to just tell a good story.
Right.
And I think that like I do want to have like a more in-depth conversation on that idea. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But I think if you look at it the way that like you grew up reading comics, and if you look at it that like through that mindset, you're gonna have a big problem because it's gonna be overbearing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just in Naomi kind of a shorthand for, but you know what also is kind of crazy is him having created Miles Morales. You know, I know the backstory of Bendis, and so it almost feels like he's already been there. He's already been down this road before with creating an African American character from a different universe, from a different reality, and coming over into ours. So it was very difficult for me not to compare it to Miles. And I love Miles Morales so much. And like I said, we're going to have a bigger discussion on Miles Morales and Riri Williams as well. But in this one, like I said, it just the whole thing, even down to the name, the title being season one, and then now we're about to wrap up season two. It just felt like a pitch for a TV series, and we found out it was because the show came out a year after she was created, and you know they have in the back. Bendis kind of talks about his his life almost coming to an end and thinking about a lot of these things. But DC really opened up the bag for Bendis and was like to get him to come over from Marvel. Hey, you can do whatever you want. You can have your you want your own line, Wonder Comics. You want your own character, Naomi. You want to put her in every super team, yeah, whatever. Like, oh yeah, give him a TV show too. Like I'm surprised she didn't get a movie. I just don't like when a character. It almost feels like the character's forced down your throat instead of you being organically coming to the character and being like, "Oh, I like that character. I wish she was in more stuff." It's like, no, she's already in Justice League. She's already in Young Justice, and it's like normally Young Justice is the NXT, and then the Justice League is the WWE. Like that's the hierarchy, right? Like, so I would want to see her become a.
I got such a good comment about that, man.
Yeah,
because like once they go up there, their comics get canceled, and then like whatever.
Yeah, but you know, ever since they dropped that new 52, and they were like, you know what? Cyborg's never been a Titan.
Right.
He's a founding member of the Justice League. Like,
yeah,
I had an issue with that.
You know, kind of go around and take shortcuts, and then that made folks mad. You know, in the case of Cyborg, because then it was like, well, wait a minute. You bumped John Jones, who's been in like every incarnation for Cyborg.
Right.
Yeah. Like, it's like.
Well, that would be even like
representation in like the worst way imaginable.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your motives and intentions were good, but like the way you worked it and actually performed it was trash.
Right. And I felt the same way too about that, where it was like Jeff Johns was getting everything. He was the golden boy.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to make Cyborg part of the? And I was like, wait a minute. You kind of like trying to push Cyborg down. I didn't ask for this. You're trying to push him down my throat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a very good point, Seaberry.
So with that, because that is 100% accurate. And this is where I think we have to start to like. We've got to distinguish between the corporate aspect of this comic book company or like Warner Entertainment or whatever, and then like the characters themselves, because like the problems with Naomi are Brian Michael Bendis and like what DC gave to Brian Michael Bendis. It has literally nothing to do with the character or like that was in this version of what we saw. This version of what we saw like was Brian Michael Bendis writing Miss Marvel, like because that we have that fanboy or that fangirl type of like attitude, plus the who am I deal. And I think that is such a, and I love Miss Marvel. I love her. That characterization is so charming because it feels like I was that kid, you know.
Yes,
And I
right,
think that that's something we can all relate to.
right.
I think where you start to damage the character is when you start to say like, well, Brian Michael Bendis's original character for DC Comics now is going to be in, you know, Young Justice and has their own TV show and is now in the Justice League. And I think that that's the same thing with Jeff Johns. And like that's why we have to really distinguish and separate those two things, because I think once that like if I'm looking at it through that aspect, like the real world,
Mm-hmm.
like Warner Entertainment lens, then yes, 100%. Like I don't think I like this comic, but like on its own, having not watched this, having not read the Justice League stuff, because like who cares, right? Because like genuinely, you're gonna have to pull something really really spectacular to make me want to read a Justice League run now. But like that makes sense. Like that's to me is what's going to make this comic good, and make this character really charming and grow and everything like that, because I think that's the key part for me.
Right.
I would say the Young Justice stuff felt a little less forced because they're like her peers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, a lot of characters been around longer in real time, but in comic book time, they're similar in age, similar sensibilities.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that stuff was kind of cool. But yeah, man, like, I got hyped when she was in Justice League and I jumped on the book and I was like, this ain't it, Chief. This ain't it.
Yeah,
no.
And I didn't read any of that Justice League, but it would also, like, for me, feel like if a year after Miles was created, he's on the Avengers. Like, I felt like we needed time to grow with Miles. And like I said, we'll get to that in another episode. But with Naomi, I just didn't feel it. And I'm coming to it as somebody who didn't know anything about her. And then I'm jumping into this trade, and Hunter did as well. Seaberry was reading it, month to month, issue to issue. So he had a little bit more time with it. But for me, it was like, oh, I already know she's got a TV show going into this. I already know she's in the Justice League.
Yeah, I knew she had a TV show, but I didn't know she was in Justice League. Did Bendis write that Justice League run?
Nah.
Okay, so it was just like put him in. Okay, I got it. I think too, where the way that I was reading this was like that Wonder Comics is like its own thing, like outside of everything else.
That's what I was thinking at first too.
Yeah, and then her placement of being like not in Metropolis or Star City or wherever else or Gotham, I think that was also what made me feel like I liked her being disconnected, and like knowing that like thinking in the outside realm of like not what's it with in between these two covers, like the front cover and back cover,
right?
Like if you ignore all of that, then this is great. If you don't ignore all of that, then I think that tarnishes it.
Yeah, I did enjoy the like you said, kind of the discovery factor and the wonder about superheroes. It was also interesting that it takes place in Oregon, which is kind of like where Bendis lives now. And a lot of it is about diversity, which Bendis has African American daughters that he adopted, which I love. And I love that he has now created Miles, Riri, and Naomi. So the fact that he has brought these characters to life is fantastic. Also, her last name is McDuffie, a tribute to Dwayne McDuffie. So that was all, it's nice nods. And I like that they exist. But if I just take it from the point of the story, I like it better if you combine season 1 and season 2. And so if we have a 12 issue arc for her, like kind of like the Mr. Miracle that Hunter and I have loved, and then also the Vision book from Tom King, like the 12 issue arc is kind of a little bit more a little bit more breathing room. And this 6 issues, it just felt, like I said, just kind of very generic by the numbers. Felt like a TV show, and I just didn't find a lot. I guess maybe just the novelty of being a comic book reader my whole life. It just didn't feel anything new to me. But the art did. Like I said, the art to me felt like this is fresh air to me, and it was, I guess, just my sensibilities of art, what I like in artists. So to me, Jamal Campbell, hands down, was the MVP of the book, and it's hard. What's that?
Bendis did write the Justice League
art. Oh, he did. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. But that's actually another good point, Seaberry. Bendis's run on DC, I can't tell you the highlights of it. Besides creating Naomi now, I think is to me is the highlight of his DC time. But I haven't heard anything about his Superman run. I haven't heard anything about his Justice League run. And granted, I haven't been following comics closely for the last 5 years, but I still thought I would have heard something from
Mhm.
one of the biggest names in comics. Seaberry, do you have a sense of like, has he been making any impact at DC so far?
Man, nobody likes this Superman. I don't
Dang.
think people like the Justice League. I think the bright spots are Naomi and Young Justice, which went on to include Naomi. Those have kind of been his high marks. Now I am going to get the trades of his Legion of Superheroes stuff.
Okay.
A lot of it just look cool, and then also there's a Justice League Legion of Superheroes crossover series. I also want to check that out. But like, I think the Naomi stuff and like the Young Justice stuff is, again, have kind of been the high points, man. Like it's a little like sad. It kind of hurts because like I was a Bendis stan,
Oh
probably.
yeah.
So I've got a question for both of you, since both of you are Bendis fans.
Yes.
I want to start this by saying that I am not a Bendis fan, and then I want to talk about something that with Bendis that can't happen a little bit later. What do you two honestly feel like Bendis has like knocked it out of the park on since Ultimate Comics Miles Morales?
Seabury, you go first.
Man, I'm keeping it a buck, dude. I wasn't feeling the Avengers like before he took over, man. Like, and I mean, maybe it wasn't so much his writing, but it was his willingness to bring in characters who had never been Avengers, like
Right.
Luke, Spider-Man, like, cause like I remember old fans were like, Spider-Man just shouldn't be an Avenger. And like, but why? Cause he never has been. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, that's silly. Yeah.
yeah, that's not a real reason. And
Right.
and like, I'm kind of biased because like, dude, before he kind of made Luke Cage contemporary, like they had started back putting him in that dumb puffy yellow shirt and
Oh
metal
yeah.
head.
Right.
He was looking goofy, dude, and just dated. So like I think the main thing that Bendis won my allegiance for was updating characters that I cared about. And also like he tends to get that he operates in a shared universe. And I feel like, yeah, he'll make new characters, but he will bring characters back. And I know some people hate his version of the Hood in Avengers, but I was just glad to see the freaking character being used.
Right.
Because, like, the Hood came in hot, had his little, mini series, whatever.
Yeah. Created by
Then
Brian K. Vaughan.
then he was like back on the bench.
Right.
Like he was riding time, but then it was like, oh, the Hood, yeah, I know what to do with him. So like, I guess it was more about that. I mean, cause look, I get it. I know Bendis speaking. I do mean speak. Like, like his comics get super wordy and they'll say the same words over and over again because he's trying to mimic, realistic speaking patterns. I get it. I know the Bendis crutches, and I get how that can be annoying to people. Like I said, he kind of tugged on my nostalgia strings because he's, willing to kind of give new takes on characters and, like I say, characters that are near and dear to me, and I appreciate that. And I don't know, man. Like, it's probably more of a liking his personality and
Yeah, for sure.
And his intentions more than like, I can't say, Ben is just, blowing me away every time. But like, I feel like his intentions are good. And, I'm just rooting for him. Like I said,
yeah.
it's been hard at DC, boy. Like,
for sure. No, but to clarify, I'm talking about like after he did Miles Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah. So for
oh,
me,
like
that
what was that?
kind of like that. Well, I shouldn't say that, but kind of how Michael had Thriller. He was always
Yeah.
Thriller. He was always trying to chase success. Thriller.
100%.
Well, for me, there was two that he did after Miles that really, like, I was like in the pocket for. It was his Avengers arc that he was doing. He did Guardians of the Galaxy, which at the time the movie hadn't come out yet, so that was like that was almost my introduction to the characters. And then he was doing X-Men, the all new X-Men, and that was where they brought the '60s team back to the present. I thought that was like amazing. I
refused to read that because that was me.
Oh man, you should go back and read it. It is fantastic. And
okay, here was my gripe. I wanted a grown Jean Grey. I was like, see y'all playing. I don't want teenage Jean Grey. I'm gonna resurrect Jean Grey. You know you want to, and then a little bit later they did. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and read that. I know a lot like that. I was just, and then I was like, man, time travel.
Even his Guardians was like almost the birth of the modern Star-Lord. And what you see in the MCU, I think, has a lot to credit Bendis for. So those would be the ones. He actually finished his Avengers and New Avengers the year after he introduced Miles in Ultimate Comics. But those would be that's the last good Bendis. Everything after that just hasn't been the same to me.
Right.
And ever since he went over to DC, like I said, I haven't seen anything stand out to me since.
Yeah. So from somebody that's not really a Bendis fan, I can tell a difference between when he's like creating something and when it's not something that he's created, because I was reading or checked out the Guardians book too. I didn't really it didn't stick with me. Like it wasn't anything that was like special to me. What I noticed amongst a lot of people that were reading comics at the time and like reviewers and whatever, around before Miles and then post Miles, it was like, dude, not another Bendis book, like, because people just got really sick of the way that he writes.
Right.
So like he's got for sure legendary runs on stuff, and I'm not taking that away from him. And again, I can tell the difference between like that his original Ultimate Spider-Man and then like stuff that he's doing now, because there is a difference. But truthfully, like he needs for me, he needs a co-writer for it to hit right. And that's why like I think Naomi worked for me, because he did have a co-writer. But so like I'm not surprised that his level, like his output at DC is not like great, because like a lot of people don't like him. And then especially like a lot of the DC Comics reading community doesn't really like him, like from what I saw. So that's not surprising in the least. And again, I'm not trying to like bury Bendis or anything like that, but like I think that it like there was a growing group of comics readers that like either steered younger or newer to comics that didn't like the way Bendis did things. And I think that that's like this is a symptom of that. And especially in DC, and especially this late in his not I want to say late in his career, but this late in his career, you're not going to get the level of stuff that he did. And it's just DC saying like, oh crap, we got Bendis, we got the big Marvel guy, let's give him all the money and give him everything. And it's just like, that's just wacky, and it's not going to turn out good. So like I'm not surprised that the response to his DC stuff is not good. Or I'll say response, I'm not gonna say the work itself because I haven't read it, but like the response is not good. It's not surprising.
I think there's been enough time and separation from that. I feel Bendis out. I feel like he's everywhere. Almost like, I don't know, like Kim Kardashian. It's like somebody that you just see him every day in the news. Bendis. And for the people like me, I think in Seaberry, we were eating it up. Like, oh yeah, give me
Yeah.
Bendis on everything. And then there was the other camp that was like, no, I'm Bendis out, and I can't get enough of this. So that was around the like maybe between '08 and 2010. He
Mhm.
left for DC, or he didn't start DC until 2017.
Yeah.
Now we're in 2022. It feels like there's been enough distance from that period now.
Right. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying just the Bendis burnout. I'm saying that style of writing became less popular with, or less appealing to readers. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't necessary, because like that's the thing with me. Like I'm an on and off comics reader for my entire life, right? Like when I get into it, I get into it, but if I'm out, I'm out. So even still, when I came back and read this, I was like, dude, this feels like Bendis. Like it feels like Bendis. And that's not always a good thing for me. And I just mean like the taste. Because sometimes like art is subjective. Whether you like something or not is subjective. Now, that's why I'm specifically saying, or not saying, that his work is not good, because I believe it is. But I think that that style of writing and that very detailed like dialogue is not something that a lot of people like. So I think it just, besides the burnout aspect, I think it's just that style became less appealing to more people.
Right. Yeah. And see, for me, not only was what made Bendis Bendis was a lot of the dialogue heavy stuff, it was that it was funny. And so when I read Naomi, I didn't get the same humor that I got out of Ultimate Spider-Man Peter and Ultimate Spider-Man Miles, and a lot of the stuff he was doing on Avengers, a lot of stuff with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, all of those things, and even in Guardians, there was a lot of comedy and humor in Guardians. I didn't get that as much in Naomi. So that was where I felt like it just kind of wasn't the same Bendis to me. It didn't get me in the same way. And that's not to say that every Bendis comic is funny, because his Daredevil run is one of my favorite runs of all time. And there's very little humor in there. A lot of stuff happens to Matt Murdock in there, and it is not funny. But I've just like, I think Ultimate Spider-Man is my favorite run of all time, and they set the record. Him and Bagley set the record for consecutive creator on the same book, and that is what a lot of my goodwill towards Bendis comes from. It's one of my it is my favorite run of all time, and then creating Miles is one of my favorite characters of all time. So that's where a lot of my Bendis love comes from. And even stuff like House of M. Like, there's just some great stories that he wrote and contributed at Marvel, but I wonder if by him just staying on one side, Seaberry, did it affect Bendis? And today we have a lot of creators going back and forth. We do have some that stay on one side or the other, but is it better to go back and forth, kind of like Chip Zdarsky, and write your own stuff, or is it better to stay at one company or the other? I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Jump around or shop around. Smokey Robinson once saying,
You better
but
shop around.
but like, man, I know a lot of the writers be struggling, man, and them exclusive contracts normally mean, hey, I can get insurance now.
Right.
So like on some real world stuff, I understand why they do it. But yeah, I mean, cause like I kind of like what Chip Zdarsky and others do, kind of jump around, and cause like also like I don't know, man, Ben's been in Marvel so long, like once he inevitably jumped, it's like how can you match the hype? Cause like I wondered, I was like, cause like I think he might have done like some Batman stories or some, like some random Batman stories and stuff like that early in his career. But I was like, I wonder what Bendis would be like if he had like, some lengthy runs at DC. And there's always wondering. Then he finally said, all right, I signed with DC. So like after years it finally happens, and it's like, how can you match that hype? How can you match the expectations, man? It's just a big old beast,
Right. Yeah, I wonder, perhaps on a future episode of the Comic Book Kaiju, we can get into that. But yeah, I think, Hunter, you should continue with season 2 of Naomi. I think it's depending on how they stick the landing on this last issue.
Hmm.
I did enjoy the combined season 1 and season 2 because I'm interested enough in the mystery of her parents and what's going to happen that I wanted to see what happened next. I just felt like it was kind of, like I said, bland in the actual setup of it, of what was
Hmm.
happening. But then I wanted to see what was going on with the mystery. So season 2 is satisfying. So I think you should continue with it.
Yeah, I definitely plan on it. I actually plan on going a little bit further too and reading some of the other Wonder Comics books.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I want to check out Amethyst, the Amy Reeder book, because I like Amy Reeder stuff a lot. So
I
I'm
want to
gonna
see that
check that
Wonder
out.
Twins.
Oh yeah. So like I'm more interested, like from a writer standpoint, I'm way more interested in Amy Reeder. Um and her art style is just amazing. So I'm more interested in that than the Wonder Twins book, but that's neither here nor there. I do plan on reading the rest of this because I did enjoy it. I also really felt like, I know that we're kind of like pitching this or seeing this as like a TV series and seeing it that way. This felt like the pilot episode of something, like, because it felt like all of that stuff would have happened. The issue breaks felt like commercial breaks, like all of that stuff. So I normally don't read trades really quickly, but this one like kind of just sped by. So I really want there to be more than just 2 or 3, because I don't think I'm going to be satisfied with just like 12 issues of this, because like that's the way this feels. It's like watching 2 episodes of a TV series, which doesn't make much sense to me.
Right. Yeah, hopefully we can get some more stuff. I will say, Seaberry, did you read the Wonder Twins book?
I did not.
That is written by Mark Russell, and Mark Russell has been doing some nice stuff, I will say. He did the Snagglepuss comic book, he did the Flintstones comic book, and he also did the Fantastic Four life story. So he's been actually putting out a nice little building up, and he did the Not All Robots, which I really love. That it's all about artificial intelligence in the year 2056 taking over, and the humans having an uneasy existence with them. So Mark Russell has actually been putting out some really good stuff. So that's actually another reason why I want to read that Wonder Twins. Seabury, did you say Wonder Comics is no longer a thing?
I don't think it is, man. Cause
Okay.
like all those books got canned.
Yeah, that's the problem with getting snapped away and coming back after Thanos, and you're like, "Hey, what's been happening while I was gone?" Oh yeah, Wonder Comics, that was a thing, and now it's gone. So we'll see what happens, and maybe on a future episode of the Comic Book Kaiju, we can discuss that. Actually, Seabury, before we wrap up, did you have any closing thoughts on Naomi that you wanted to get out that we haven't already said?
Man, just like I said, man, it hits some spots for me. I like the whole coming of age. And,
Yes.
oh, I'm an alien, and I like her Superman fangirling.
Right. That was
Yeah,
great. I did like that.
yeah. I like this stuff. I like the character. Yeah, I agree. They kind of went overkill, but like, yeah, let's put her in everything. It's like, slow down, Chuckles.
Yeah.
Where's the fire? But I'm enjoying season 2. I think the story is progressing at a nice pace, and like I said, I'm also, I have a David Walker bias too, because like I don't know, when he wrote his issues of Cyborg, I was just like, oh wow, like I don't know. I think before I kind of cared about Cyborg out of obligation, because it's like, well, like the black guy that DC tried to, but it's like, no, David Walker like gave him dimension
Right.
and genitalia. Like, I'm sorry, like
What? Wait.
well, during David Walker's run, he was able to kind of like turn his body back human for short periods of time. Cause like they don't really talk about it. If you look at,
I hate DC so much.
but if you look at Cyborg, it's like he doesn't really have, the parts.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's kind of been that way for years, and like nobody ever talked about it. And Dave Walker was like, "Not on my watch." Guess what I'm getting?
Look,
this is great, Hunter Camp.
DC Comics is so effing annoying sometimes. Ugh.
Well,
I have so much to say about that.
No, but this was him righting a wrong, though, righting a long-term wrong to me. Like,
right.
how you got a character that's basically a black Ken doll?
Yeah. But that time with DC was just very, very on the nose about like, aren't you, like, we don't like fun, we don't like humor, all of our characters, in all of our heroes like F, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
you know what? Actually,
give me a break. They can't be in love with each other and they can't get married, but like they do it.
That's actually,
my God, they do it all the time.
A very good topic for a future episode, because I just watched the new Green Lantern animated movie.
Yeah.
What is it? Beware My Power. Actually, Seaberry, I highly recommend that.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Like I was tell you in an email, man. John Semper Jr. He was the EP on the '90s Spider-Man.
Ooh.
Okay. And he wrote a run of Cyborg, and and he was involved in it. And we talked to him, and also, like I said, he wrote freaking Class Act, man.
I mean,
he wrote Class Act.
Yes,
which I saw in the theater.
Me
my
too.
Mom.
Well, with my brother, thanks to Big Bro, he was like, "Come on, Mark, you want to see Class Act?" I was like, "Cool."
Yeah.
I saw it on the USA Network.
Nice.
No, that's cool. And he wrote on the Kid and Play animated cartoon.
Ooh.
So I watched that too.
Yeah. So yeah, man. And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna beat the drum for Semper. The very first Spider-Verse anybody ever saw was on his '90s Spider-Man cartoon. So that was the first Spider-Verse y'all saw. People don't be wanting to give him credit. Put some respect on John Semper Jr.'s name.
Yeah. But the reason I brought that up is because there's been a lot of R-rated DC stuff, and they've been leaning towards, if we put bad language in it, and if we have Batman and Batgirl doing it, then this is gonna be better for the kids. They're gonna love it, because
I just threw up in my mouth when you said this.
Because it's gross. It's terrible.
Deadpool did great, and Marvel, and we're gonna make Harley Quinn swear, and we're gonna make all this stuff. So that's a future topic, but that new Green Lantern has some of that in it. So beware, Seaberry.
Harley Quinn's swearing makes sense.
Well, I just like that show in general, but I don't think it's in line with the regular DC universe that I grew up with, Batman the Animated Series universe. So we'll talk about that on a future episode. But I would like to thank everyone for joining us on this episode, our first ever Book of the Month Club. This was Seaberry's pick. So next month we're gonna go over to Hunter Camp's pick. Do you want to say it now, or you want it to be?
I don't know what it is yet.
Okay, well,
but I'm gonna tell you, it's either gonna be Omega Men, by, I think, is it Tom King? Tom King's Omega Men?
Yes.
Or the Godzilla History's Greatest Monster IDW book, because I got a suggestion for that. Or it's gonna be like Berserk or something.
Well, hurry up and decide. And also follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and I will let you know what Hunter Camp has picked. Perhaps you can follow me at Vactor Loves Comics, or just Vactor. But we also would like to thank all of you listeners out there, and you viewers, if you're looking on YouTube. Leave us a comment down below if you've read Naomi Season 1, or if you have any thoughts on Bendis going to DC, or any of the things that we discussed in this episode. Let us know down below. You can always follow us over at Anchor, and all of wherever your podcasts are found, you can find us there. Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you can leave us a review. We are also part of the GeekSoToSpeak podcast network, so you can check out GeekSoToSpeak, which is currently on maybe hiatus. I don't know, but GeekSoToSpeak is there's 200 episodes you can listen to. TREKnological is our Star Trek podcast. That is definitely on hiatus. We just finished up talking about Strange New Worlds, which is fantastic. If you're a Star Trek fan, check out all of our previous episodes as we reviewed Strange New Worlds. And then our video game podcast is called the Sandbox Gamers. We actually just recorded an episode last night talking about all the video games we've been playing, including the Halo Infinite co-op. Next week, we're going to be talking about Stray, which is the cat game that Hunter Camp has been obsessed with. But that is the Sandbox Gamers. Mr. Hunter Camp, speaking of Stray, you were streaming on Twitch. Why don't you tell me about that?
I am streaming on Twitch. I am streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/I am Hunter Camp. I am mostly focusing on Elden Ring and Stray right now. I've rebuilt my Elden Ring character and have started over, so you get to watch that from the beginning. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I have a whole history behind this character. So
his name is Dude Love. Hunter Camp told me.
Not his name. Yeah, no, his name is Percy Billings III. You can find out more on my Instagram at instagram.com. I am Hunter Camp, and then Twitter at Twitter for Hunter Camp.
Yeah. And Mr. Markus Seaberry, I know that Black Nerd Power is on hiatus right now, but you are reviewing stuff at On Location Memphis.
CineSundry. Yeah. CineSundry, that's a movie review show I do in conjunction with On Location Memphis. You can find it on the On Location Memphis Facebook page or the On Location Memphis YouTube channel. Sometimes it's me solo. Sometimes, I'll deep dive a nerdy series and bring on a guest, or, sometimes, I'll have other guests, to join in. I like to have people with me when I nerd out. So I got that going on, and also Black Nerd Power is on hiatus. You can listen to all the past episodes on the Kazukian app. That is KUDZUKIAN, and your boy still active, man. We trying to bring this Orange Mound Bound to the masses. That's gonna be a animated series, about Orange Mound. Like the first Black community in America, for real. Do your Googles, and just if you see some crowdfunding or something for Orange Mound Bound, please contribute. We're trying to do quality animation, but we're super indie. Nice. So please support that.
Excellent. And please support us at the Comic Book Kaiju, where we love comics, and you should too.